Hey, it's Lou, and it's time for Tough Love Tuesday. And today we have to approach a delicate subject, maybe not that delicate, but I hate to say this, it pains me to say this, but most of the on-camera stuff that I see on Zoom looks absolutely terrible. Even people who should know better, even professionals, even experts, a lot of times when they're appearing on Zoom, they look just awful. But there are ways to fix it. Let's talk about some of the biggest sins that people commit when they go on to Zoom and how to fix them. Now, I'm not going to talk about the really obvious, egregious stuff like eating your lunch on camera when you're on Zoom. Nobody wants to see that. We're working remotely in many cases. There's going to be dogs barking. There's going to be background noise from time to time, but all of this stuff is easily resolved. You don't have to look like a doofus on camera. So let's talk about lighting, lane lighting. Now, first of all, if I shut my light, that doesn't look too good, does it? But most people appear this way on Zoom. I've got a little bit of light coming from above and a little bit coming into the window, but it's bad. The camera's trying to compensate for it, but it's not very good. Another thing that we see a lot on Zoom as the camera readjusts to the light here is people don't understand composition and the rule of thirds, where your eyes should be on the top third of the screen looking at the camera, not down at the screen, not down at your keyboard. And if you do have a lower third, the reason it's called that is because if your name is below you, that's usually considered a lower third. We pick that up from TV. Another thing we see quite a bit is just people just too low on the frame, way too much headroom. You do not need that much headroom, and I certainly don't need an award coming out of my head. The rule of thumb is here, and again, I'm on a standing desk, so I have to adjust a little bit. But think about having a golf ball on your head. You don't want more than the size of a golf ball between the top of your head and the top of the screen. So this is no good. Bad. This is no good. This is really no good, especially with my face. Remember, try to keep the distance about a golf ball size between the top of your head and the top of the screen. All right, let's talk about backgrounds. Now, this can be a really embarrassing situation here. I've got a few shelves. It's not perfect. I've got my Authority bling back there and Dave Grohl and other things. But your background is part of the frame and part of the picture and part of the overall what you're showing on Zoom. So you don't want your background to be bland or boring or messy or distracting. If you have a neutral background, that's usually best, but I've seen some doozies. I think maybe you've seen the Ted Nugent Zoom picture with certain things behind him that are a bit unsavory. Not that he's very likable to begin with, but again, your background matters. So try to pay attention to that as well. Also, camera angle. I mentioned you want to look at the camera. This is not always that easy because your screen is down here. Your natural tendency is to look at what's on the screen. You have to force your eyes up to where the camera is. And that also means that, again, from a composition standpoint, I'm pretty much filming the screen here, but I see a lot of what I call up the nose cam, where your camera's down here and you're basically looking up the person's nose. Not a very flattering shot. Or you just basically have a bad, unflattering angle. Another big sin, and I tell folks this over and over again, if you wear glasses, avoid ring lights like the plague. Ring lights are notorious for reflecting on your glasses. If you have lighting, make sure it's coming from the front. You don't want a window behind you, especially if it's bright. And if you have lighting and you're getting reflection in your glasses, try to get the lights up as far as you can and then point them down. Now you can see if I look up, I've got a big ass light up here, but it's about as high as it can go. So if I'm looking at the camera, typically I'm not getting too much glare. Again, if I look up, I'm going to get it, but some of that can't be helped. But if you raise your lights and diffuse them, you shouldn't have as bad a time. You don't want harsh lighting bouncing off your glasses, and you especially don't want to use a ring light. Those are just awful. Last, but definitely not least, and this is so common and so avoidable. If you are using a virtual background or the background on Zoom, the virtual backgrounds on Zoom, you really need to have a green screen. Otherwise, you're going to disappear into the background. It's going to look ridiculous. Let me see if I can show you what I mean here. This is one of the lame Zoom backgrounds that they have. It's just a default. Now, again, I have really good lighting, so Zoom is pretty forgiving on this, but oftentimes you'll see your hands disappearing or you're going out of frame, all kinds of crazy stuff happening. So a lot of that can be corrected with decent lighting. And if that doesn't work, then you have to have an actual green screen behind you. Green screen and lighting, that's really the key. So again, I have all kinds of different backgrounds and I can put a lot of things behind me. And again, you can see the ghosting there if I'm moving around. Oftentimes, if you don't have good lighting, it's 100 times worse. You can see I'm fading, I'm doing all kinds of crazy stuff here. Pay attention to that. Even if you're using the blur thing, you're going to get some ghosting if your lighting's not good. If you are using a virtual background, have good lighting and or use a green screen, because that will make it look so much better. And remember, inside the Zoom settings, there is a setting called Touch Up My Appearance. So you can see if I take off that Touch Up My Appearance, I'm like, oh, I look my age. I have bags under my eyes. I don't look awesome. So this is without Touch Up My Appearance, but again, I'm using a very good camera, and this is with Touch Up My Appearance. So I think you can see more or less of a difference there. It's just really softened you up a little bit. So especially if you are of a certain age like me and you want to do the Touch Up My Appearance, go for it. It'll just soften things up a little bit. And again, if you have a decent video camera, this is going to cover a lot of the sins that you would normally see there. Otherwise, try not to look like a doofus on camera. It's easy to fix. And if you're looking crappy on camera, it's really going to damage your online brand and your overall persona. So it's not that difficult to do these few things to make sure that you are putting your best foot forward on camera. Look at the screen, the lens, camera, watch your headroom, watch your lighting, watch your angles. Those are just a few suggestions for not looking like a doofus on camera. This is Tough Love Tuesday, and we'll see you next week.